To the October 20th meeting of the Mobile City Planning Commission, I would like to take a moment to review our general operating procedures. Our meeting is divided into two sessions, the public hearing session and the deliberation session. In the public hearing session, an application or group application on the agenda is called. The applicant makes his or her presentation. Commission members ask questions, if any, and members of the public may make their comments. Only 4 people may speak for an agenda item and 4 against. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. After 4 minutes, a speaker will hear a loud beep and indicate they have 1 minute left to speak, and we ask that you summarize your comments. After all opposition speakers have finished, the applicant will be given time to respond. If you do intend to speak, please come to the podium at the bottom of the stairs, speak into the microphone, and give your name and address for our minutes. Please direct all comments to the commission only and not to the applicant or the audience, and remember to speak directly into the microphone. On routine applications, the applicant may simply raise his or her hand if there are no objections to the staff recommendations. I will then announce that the applicant is in agreement with those recommendations, and if there are any questions, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. After hearing all the applications on the agenda, the commission will then go into the deliberation session where we discuss each application with input from the staff as necessary, but with no input from the audience. The commissioners then vote on each application, and results of that voting can be learned from the planning department. If some issues arise in the deliberation session that were not addressed in the public hearing, we have the discretion to allow additional comments pertaining to those issues in order to resolve them or call the application to be held over for discussion in a future meeting. Occasionally, 1 or more commission members may recuse themselves from discussing and voting on a given application. A recusal does not necessarily mean the member is directly involved with the application or the applicant, but depending upon the circumstances, ethical rules may require that recusal when there's only the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest. If a regular member recuses, a supernumerary will vote in their stead. The Planning Commission makes final decisions, subject to appeal, on subdivisions, planning approvals, and planned unit developments, or PUDs. And it is noted that the Planning Commission only makes recommendations on zoning applications, with the City Council making the final decision. At this time, please turn off all your cell phones or turn them to silent. Commissioners and staff, please remember to turn on your microphones when speaking. We'll call the roll. Myself, Jay Stubbs, present. Mr. Alan Cameron, Ms. Jennifer Denson, Mr. Carlos Gant, Ms. Shirley Sessions, Mr. Taylor Atchison, Mr. Matt Anderson, Mr. Nick Amberger, Mr. Scott Jones, Ms. Susan Carley, Mr. Kirk Matei. We have 6 members present, so we do have a quorum. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda of 8 items for today. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor? We'll move on to new subdivision applications. Agenda item number 1, 561 Lacine Street. Am I pronouncing that correctly? Lasesny Street and 1848 Canal Street. It's been recommended for denial for nonconformity. Is the applicant present? Would you like to speak towards the recommendation? Yes, please do.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my first time dealing with a situation like this, but I think in December of...
What your name and address? Yeah.
Jason Carter.
Okay.
Home address 25100 Polktown Road, Bluesdale, Mississippi.
Okay.
Okay, so this property at the corner of Canal and La Cessna, I purchased it back in December of 2021. I didn't receive a survey when the property was purchased, and it does have 2 structures on it. The first structure is the corner of Canal and La Cessna, 1848 Canal. The second property or structure faces La Cessna Street. Okay, so the house on Canal Street, I sold it, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, assuming that the property line was further back than it was. As you can see in the picture, the property line goes to the back door of that home. See where the line is? that's right at the back door. So anyway, there's a driveway for that house directly on the other side of the property line. So anyway, the house was sold. So I would like to be able to give that buyer at least the extra piece of land where the driveway is. There's no other driveway, and they can't come out of their back door without being on my property. So, I mean, I don't even know why it was divided like that to where they can't even come out of the back door without, as we can see here.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Please stay there. Comments from staff regarding this unique situation.
Right now, the legal lot of record is at this configuration, 50 by 150. The whole thing.
There's two separate deeds.
There could be two separate deeds via meets and bounds, but that is not a legal lot of record. Now, what you can do is get with your surveyor, have the surveyor do some research to establish this as a non-conforming lot of record. This line here, that could have come into existence at some point, but you acquired this entire lot as it exists here, 50 by 150. That's the legal lot of record. Only if there is a meets and bounds description going back to 1964 would that be recognized. Because this is a very substandard lot. Basically, one lot, as proposed, is 5,000 square feet. The other lot is 2,500 square feet, well below current standards. In looking at the lots in the surrounding area, the only other lot that we found that was anywhere near that small was this lot here at the corner, which was 6,000 square feet. So while you have an existing lot of record, you have a non-conforming use with two structures on it. In terms of the platting of the property, we would need a deed describing what you're saying exists now, going back to 1964.
A question for staff, maybe on the applicant's behalf. If you were to find that and recognize that existing lot line, as he says, is deeded, I think he's still trying to change that lot line. Is that something we would consider since it is already a substandard lot?
Depends on the degree of substandard. I would say what I would, as the staff, would prefer to see the deeds, plot them out, and see their configuration, the area of the lots, the setbacks, how much nonconformity would changing those deeds create. Do you understand what I'm saying? There may be a deed going back to the 60s showing this.
I think he already researched that.
He did not provide it.
And if the commission would not allow the movement of that inner lot line, his only other option would be to offer an easement as part of that deed, that sale of that property.
You know, Mr. Atchison, part of me is like trying to figure out all the different ways we could problem solve. But really the best way, at least for a starting point, is if we have some of those deeds that Mr. Erdman did, and then would be able to communicate with the applicant surveyor and then provide the board, better information based on those documents. But based on what we had presented to us, was simply this.
So that's only about maybe 20 foot from where the
The
existing-
problem is, well, but see, the problem is what is existing is this as one lot, 50 by 150. Legally.
But I'm asking legally, what did you sell legally?
1848 Canal Street. See,
But how was that property described? Did you,
well, on the deed, I don't have it with me. On the deed, it's actually split in half, just like where you have the little red dot on the line.
okay, I just realized it probably, and this is just based on what I've seen, it probably says the south half of
Exactly.
lot 1.
Exactly.
So that means that, if that's correct, what he sold is roughly at this dotted line, because if you take and divide this length in half, that puts you about right there.
That's how it's worded.
Yeah.
No. I would suggest a holdover. Now, the question is for how long? If all this information's readily available and we can have it by noon on Monday, a holdover until the November 3rd meeting will be fine. If we don't have it by then, it would need to be held over until the November 20th meeting.
And so what exactly do I need to? Okay.
And if he hasn't done the research,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure Monday's going to be adequate.
Okay.
Mr. Carter, are you under any time constraints?
No, I just want to, the house is sold. I just want to be able to give them, there's a power pole right there where the darker line is. So that's where everyone assumed the, boundary line or
Right.
property line was. I just want to be able to give them what they figured they were paying for. Somehow. Yeah, it was a title.
How did this issue arise? Who realized that they didn't own
Well,
that driveway?
After the property was sold, I got a survey so that I can put up a fence between. There's no fence
Got it.
between the two,
Okay.
and that's what we found.
Well,
Mm-hmm. Okay. It's a garage apartment upstairs.
Basically, kind of going back, it's how much nonconforming are we going to have, and are we going to increase the degree of nonconformity going forward?
Has the sale closed?
Yep. 2 months ago.
Mr. Carter, is the 20th? Yeah, it would a holdover until the November 20th meeting?
That'll be fine.
Okay,
Yeah, that'll be fine.
thank you, sir.
All right, so is that it for me?
Yes,
All
sir.
right, thanks, appreciate it.
Well, since it's on the agenda, I still have to ask, is there anyone else here to speak for this agenda item?
And that would be the November the 17th, not
November
the 20th.
17th? Thank you.
November 17th. All right,
Is
thanks.
there anyone else here to speak for this agenda item? Is there anyone here to speak against it? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to number 2 on the agenda. 4876 Fellowship Drive, Capital Tractor Subdivision. It's been recommended for tentative approval with 8 conditions. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with the 8 conditions? Is there anyone else here to speak for this agenda item, 4876 Fellowship Drive? Anyone here to speak against this agenda item? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 3, southeast corner of Cody Road and Overlook Road, extending to the north side of Victor Road, the Orchard Park subdivision. It's been recommended here on the agenda for tentative approval with 18 listed conditions. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with the 18 conditions? Applicant is present and in agreement. Ms.
Mr.
Pappas?
Chairman, I realized, and we have not informed the applicant, I realized we need to add a condition, which is completion of the rezoning process. If the commission will recall, this same site was up for rezoning a few weeks ago. The rezoning did downzone, proposed to downzone this site to R1 single-family residential. We would want that rezoning process completed before this final plat is recorded.
Are you in agreement with that? Okay, the applicant just raised his hand, shook his head yes, in agreement. Note that we do have, to commissioners, we do have email comments at your desk. One email comment. And since everyone has it, I won't read it. Is there anyone else here to speak for agenda item number 3? Is there anyone else here in the audience to speak against agenda item number 3? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 4, the west side of Moffett Road, south of Helen Street, extending to the north side of Howells Ferry Road, east of Morgenthau Drive, the Cayley's Cove subdivision. It's been recommended for tentative approval with 16 listed conditions. Is the applicant present?
Mr. Chairman, I do need to bring up, we have received an email, and you should have it at your seats. There are multiple owners of this property. One of the owners has listed concerns and also did not submit their consent. Based on this, staff would recommend a holdover so that they can work this situation out.
Commissioners, you do have the copy of that email in front of you.
It's not so much a legal issue. We thought it was originally when I got an email this morning. It is one of the, this is a tenants in common, and there are several different owners that have percentage interest, and one percentage interest owner has some reservations right now. So until she gets her consent, we cannot go forward. So it's, whether it's 2 or 4 weeks, I don't know. It depends on how long it takes them. It's my understanding what the holdout owner wants would require a reconfiguration of the site plan. So, but whether it's 2 or 4 weeks, it doesn't matter.
Is the applicant here? Do you have any input on how long of a holdover you think you'll need?
Applicant is here and acknowledged that 2-week potential holdover would be adequate. Anyone else here to speak for agenda item number 4? Anyone here to speak against agenda item number 4? Well, yeah, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, sir.
My name is Philip Kerrigan, 23095 Perdido Beach Boulevard, Orange Beach, Alabama. I own property just to the south of this, and I'm concerned mainly about, I'm not against the subdivision per se. It's, I have concerns about drainage issues. And I wanted information about that. I know this is a preliminary plat and all that, but I feel like it that's my basic concern is how they're going to do a detention pond, and would it be adequate for the excessive rainfalls that we often have?
Yes, sir. Mr. Kerrigan,
So-
since it looks like this will be an agenda item that'll be held over for at least 2 weeks,
Yes.
there's adequate time for you to ask that question of the applicant.
Well, I of the applicant. Okay, I didn't know his name. It's not on anything that's published.
This, like you said, this is a preliminary plat, and we do
Yeah.
not require them to present a drainage plan at this point in time.
Uh-huh.
Only upon approval do they then submit something to the city engineer. This
Right.
plat does show a detention pond, stormwater detention pond. I will give that to you so you can see that detention pond. And there's a detention pond,
It doesn't say
common area. So, anyway, they would have to comply with all of the city ordinances
Right.
and stormwater drainage.
Okay, and how would I find out what those requirements are? Ask the engineering department or him?
The engineering department,
Okay.
or the engineer that's doing it,
Blue
doing the
Water.
project for the owner.
Okay. And what is his name? What is his name? Well, I'll just go ask him. Okay. Thank you.
Just for the record, all we have is the engineering firm on the application. So, yes, sir. Seeing as it's on the agenda, was anyone else here to speak against or have comment on agenda item number 4? And again, this looks like it will be held over. All right, moving on to number 5 and 6, new sidewalk waiver applications. Number 5, 5560 Rangeline Road. Sidewalk waiver application is recommended for denial from staff. Is the applicant present? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Vince Lacoste, Bethel Engineering, 4103 Ridgelawn Drive. I'm here representing the project for the owner, Brad Pitts of Synergy Labs. Basically, he is adding a new building or an addition to the building that he has there for some new testing equipment that he has. And we presented a PUD that has been administratively approved with a condition of either constructing the sidewalk or having a sidewalk waiver. We submitted for a waiver, and it's recommended by staff to be denied. There is a constructible area for the sidewalk, which is, I think, what the staff looks heavily at. However, this is Rangeline Road. There is a big concrete ditch between the back of the right-of-way and the road, and there is no continuity of sidewalk here. So we would ask that the waiver be approved.
I'll give a chance for commissioners to look at their notes in the binder.
One other thing I might add is if someone does walk on this short section of sidewalk, how do they get back to the street? They have to cross this concrete ditch. Could be hazardous.
I do think this is a dangerous area for a dead-end sidewalk. I mean, I think we've taken some industrial areas with these heavy trucks and allowed waivers. Is staff and their suggestion for denial, is it just based on the fact that they can construct it? Are we taking safety concerns into, is that our job to take the safety concerns into consideration?
We don't have a history of sidewalk waivers in this area. In all fairness, that's probably due to it being somewhat developed when it was annexed into the city. So that, and based on the complete streets policy, was the reason for the recommendation.
Okay.
For the built-out areas, I guess to the north, are there sidewalks with those facilities?
Any further questions or comments from commissioners? Thank you, Mr. Lacoste. Is there anyone else here to speak for agenda item number 5, which is the sidewalk waiver at Rangeline Road, 5560 Rangeline Road? Anyone here to speak against? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to number 6, 5355 Business Parkway. Mr. Lacoste is here. It's been recommended for denial on this sidewalk waiver as well.
Yeah, Vince Lacoste, Bethel Engineering, 4103 Ridgelawn Drive. This is a very similar situation, industrial area, similar recommendation by staff to deny. There is a constructible area. There is not a ditch like there is on the other one. However, this area has even higher truck traffic. I mean, constant 18-wheeler traffic, large warehouses. This particular business, I've been there during the day, and they are coming and going frequently. I personally don't think it's wise to have sidewalks and encourage pedestrian traffic where there's that much truck traffic. So I would also recommend on behalf of Lisa Craver, CCT Logistics is the owner there, that the waiver be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Lacoste. Any further questions or comments from commissioners?
Are there any sidewalks in the park?
Alabama Power built a laydown facility on this piece of property here and built their sidewalk here. Well, maybe.
And there's also sidewalk up on Cody Road.
Yes.
They come on the end.
You know, are any of these offices ones that encourage walking between office buildings? You know, where we have sidewalks, there's normally pedestrian traffic that is there for a purpose, transiting from point A to point B. Is this area one that people would need to walk for retail purposes, get food, whatever? Or are these sort of self-contained buildings within this section of area that we're looking at here?
There's not, for instance, I don't think you're going to find that one of the businesses here are going to have employees that are going to walk over to a restaurant over here. This is a commercial park. But, you know, many commercial parks, when you go to other communities, especially when they're low-speed designed streets, you have pedestrian walkway, you have sidewalks. And that's because some people exercise. You know, they'll go out, they want to leave their office for lunch or for their break or whatever, and they'll go out and walk. And it's an amenity within the development. Now, you have an area here that has a lot of existing development, and you have a patchwork of sidewalks. You have sidewalk out at Cooeyman Road. When this property here was developed, it fronts Cooeyman and then is made the turn onto Business Parkway. While Alabama Power's site is quite large back here, but only has this minimal amount of frontage here, they installed their sidewalk as well.
Can I speak again? Okay, is there an aerial view you guys have of this? Okay, so the park to the right there is Mobile South Business Park. I did the civil on that and the buildings years ago. Very, very large warehouse space. In fact, off the page, there's a duplication of what you see of more large warehouse space. I mean, see the 18-wheeler trucks there in the parking lot, and how many can get in there? I mean, the traffic is very, very high industrial. This is not a lot of businesses that are offices. You know, this is a lot of heavy warehouse moving product. That's what this particular property is. They move product. They move seafood product, and we are submitting. We also did a PUD on this site. There are 2 site plan projects we're working on that are going to include expanding parking now, and then they're going to build another building the exact same size as what's there to the south of it, just again to handle the volume of traffic. So this is not just a normal commercial park. It is an industrial park with with a lot of high 18-wheeler traffic. And yes, there is some sidewalk, but the remaining properties that don't have it are mostly developed and built out. So the only opportunity that you have for connectivity is for someone to want to add a building, like we're wanting to do here. And most of these sites don't really have the room to add more buildings. They're built out. So I'll just mention that for what it's worth.
Question for staff: did Alabama Power apply for a sidewalk waiver?
No.
Thank you.
We're adding what kind of parking here
It's paved parking
for,
for just employees.
and what was the design speed of the streets?
I didn't design the streets, but I would estimate, as an engineer.
I'm sorry, I thought you said you did.
No, I designed the site
Gotcha.
that was there
Okay.
to the east.
Okay.
Any further questions or comments from commissioners? Anyone else here in the audience to speak on agenda item 6, 5355 Business Parkway sidewalk waiver? Seeing none, we'll move on to group applications. Agenda item 7, the west side of Todd Acres Drive, north of Hamilton Boulevard, extending to the east side of the CSX Railroad. We have two parts, a subdivision and a rezone. Subdivision has been recommended for tentative approval with 8 listed conditions, and the rezone has been recommended for approval with conditions listed. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with the conditions for the subdivision and the rezone? The applicant is present and acknowledged and said yes. Is there anyone else here to speak for agenda item number 7? Anyone here to speak against agenda item 7? Seeing none, we'll move on to the last agenda item, number 8, 6137 Todd Acres Drive. Again, it is in 2 parts with a subdivision and a rezone. The subdivision is recommended for tentative approval with 9 listed conditions, and the rezone is recommended for approval as well. Mr. Alan Cameron is recused. That still gives us a quorum. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with the conditions on the subdivision and the rezone? Applicant is present and acknowledged. Is there anyone else here to speak for agenda item number 8? Anyone here to speak against agenda item 8? All right. That will close the public hearing session. We'll now move into deliberation. Back to the first agenda item, 561 LaCesna Street and 1848 Canal Street. Original recommendation was for denial. However, in discussions, potential holdover till the November 20th. I'll entertain a motion. November 17th, sorry, Margaret, Ms. Pappas. November 20th as changed to November 17th. Entertain a motion.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes for holdover until November 17th. Agenda item number 2, 4876 Fellowship Drive. Recommended for tentative approval with 8 listed conditions. The applicant was present and in agreement. Entertain a motion.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Agenda item 3, the southeast corner of Cody Road and Overlook Road, extending to the north side of Victor Road, the Orchard Park subdivision. Comments from staff regarding the zoning process, however, recommended for tentative approval with 18 listed conditions. The applicant was present and in agreement.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded, adding the zoning process. All in favor?
Aye.
I do have one question on this one. Has traffic looked at this with regards to the additional vehicle traffic that's going to be at that intersection? Is there any additional recommendations or issues that we have with this one?
From a standalone perspective, the volume, or excuse me, not the volume, the density of the development with it being 74 lots is less than what we typically look at for requiring an impact study. We do know that there are traffic issues in the area up by Overlook and House Ferry, but corrected those to the best that we could with the project that was done several years back. Looked at Victor Road for line of sight issues. They have plenty of line of sight for needing to pull out. Could Cody Road use some improvements? Yes, but all up and down it. So pinpointing any study requirement for this development to necessarily make that improvement, we did not require the impact study. We don't have current standards right now in our subdivision regulations that require them to install any traffic calming, but it is something that we brought up for the regulations when we amend them soon. But then that would still just affect the new development and not any existing development.
Yeah, I'm wrestling with that one. I hate looking at things standalone when we know we've already got issues, and this is just going to exacerbate a problem that we currently have. I think we've got to find a better way to look at that. But okay, thank you.
We do have a properly moved and seconded motion on the floor to approve the agenda item. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Number 4, the west side of Moffett Road, south of Helen Street, extending to the north side of Howells Ferry Road, east of Morgenthau Drive, Kaylee's Cove Subdivision. Applicant was present. However, we do have comments from staff regarding ownership of the lot, so it's a potential for a holdover until the November 17th Planning Commission meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, November 3rd.
Okay. Still entertain a motion.
Second.
The motion is to hold over to November 3rd, properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for holdover passes. Number 5, under new sidewalk waiver applications, this address, 5560 Rangeline Roads, recommended for denial of the sidewalk waiver. Entertain a motion.
Second.
It is a motion to approve the waiver at 5560 Rangeline Road. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion to approve the waiver passes. Agenda item 6, 5355 Business Parkway, also application for sidewalk waiver. It's been recommended by staff for denial.
Second, citing the same concerns, the safety concerns, and just the industrial nature of the area. But yes, second to the approving the waiver.
I have one question for staff on this one. I mean, we've got a patchwork sidewalk. If we approve this, how do we connect the dots? We've like, you've got the Alabama Power up to the north, and then you've got this one, and you've got all these areas in between. Does it do any good to have a sidewalk put in when you can't
I understand
walk
what you're
traffic
saying.
in between
and
the other sites? And how do we, if we want to finish that out, we don't really have a forcing function to do that.
basically, and as property is developed, if this were all vacant, as each lot is developed, they would put in their sidewalk and then you would connect out. It happens much more slowly when you have property that's already developed, then you're waiting for them to redevelop or put in 50% or more improvements and things of that nature. The one thing I would say, though, is, to Mr. Anderson's point, when you approve the waiver, you're not going to get sidewalk there, ever.
Let me just throw a fact here. I was out in this area at an event 2 weekends ago when Victor Birch had their memorial run. And it's in a completely industrial area. And then they had this event that brought hundreds of people into that area. And they had sidewalks. And there were a ton of folks with strollers and wheelchairs, those types of things. So it may take a while, but I think there is some value added when we look at things and what could happen, even though it is an industrial site. There are some times that people use these sites, and you need these types of assets on that site. And the first site, I get it. And you got a ditch, and it's going to create a safety issue. I'm not so sure that exists on this one. I think I've got to uphold the denial based on practical use and application.
In response to Councilman Jones, I think complete streets is great, and building sidewalks is great, and walkability is great. I think building a sidewalk is a very small step in making an area walkable. The scale of the buildings, the setbacks, as you pointed out earlier, nothing to walk to. It's not connecting anything specifically. I don't see the need for it in an industrial area, although I am a big proponent of sidewalks when needed in residential areas and walking areas with environments that create and promote walkability.
Also, in response, there's a tremendous movement in certain parts of the city where private funding sidewalks is going on. So if this community wanted to get together, they could certainly do so.
Well, one thing that these things come up, and we deal with this all the time. I would, and we can ask the staff, I guess, to do stuff, or the city council, since their representative is sitting here. The tree fund, that model, you cut down a tree, you pitch into a fund, and then you go plant trees. I think that's a model that could work in this. Some of these areas, the safety concerns, the industrial, all this stuff, we've had a bunch of these on divided highways that I think we've granted the waiver on more recently. I would implore the staff or the city council to look at a way that we could use that tree fund model for these folks that are in an industrial area. One option would be to pitch that money. Yeah, our lawyer is about to shoot me down, I'm sure.
Say it's a letter that states we cannot legally do a
Ask them
sidewalk
to do it.
bank. Yes. But I'll dust it off. I have a folder.
That would be my take. It works with trees. Because to me, we see these all the time, and these are tough calls, and the safety concerns and the walkability. I think we all support the complete streets. But some of these are just, it seems like there might be a better way to do this. And maybe it's looking at what other cities have, how they've approached this after adopting complete streets. Roll Tide.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the waiver. Has been properly moved and seconded. All in favor to approve the waiver of the sidewalk at 5355 Business Parkway.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The motion passes to approve the waiver. Group application, agenda item 7, the west side of Todd Acres Drive, north of Hamilton Boulevard, extending to the east side of CSX Railroad. We'll take it in two parts. We have a subdivision recommended for tentative approval with 8 listed conditions. The applicant is present and in agreement. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor of the subdivision?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for the subdivision passes. Recommendation for rezone is for a recommendation of approval with 2 listed conditions. Again, the applicant is present and in agreement. Entertain a motion.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded on the rezone. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion for recommendation to rezone passes. Still under group applications, agenda item 8, final agenda item. Mr. Alan Cameron is recused. We still have a quorum. 6137 Todd Acres Drive. It's been recommended for a subdivision recommended for approval with 9 listed conditions. and the rezone also recommended for approval. We'll take them separately. Entertain a motion. Properly moved and seconded on the subdivision. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Rezone recommended for approval. Properly moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The motion for the recommendation of rezone passes. That concludes the agenda items. Is there any further comments from staff? Meeting adjourned.
Go Jags.
Go Jags.